Fourth Way by P.D. Ouspensky. And this is the conclusion of Chapter 5. Question by Ouspensky. Could you please say again which is internal and which external considering? Answer by Gurdjieff. External considering is a form of self-remembering in relation to people. You take other people into consideration, and you do not what is pleasant to you, but what is pleasant to them. It means that you must sacrifice yourself, but it does not mean self-sacrifice. It means that, in relation to people, you must act not without thinking. You must think first, then act. Your thinking will show you, more often than not, if this person would prefer you to act in one manner or not in another. It is all the same to you, so why not do what he likes? So, the idea of sacrifice does not enter into it. But if it is not the same to you, it is quite a different question. What is better for you? What is better for them? Who those people are? What you want from them? What you want to do for them? All this must enter into it. But the idea is that in relation to people, things must not happen mechanically, without thinking. You must decide the course of action. It means that you do not walk over people without seeing them. And internal considering means that you walk over them without noticing. We have too much internal and not enough external considering. External considering is very important for self-remembering. If we have not got enough of it, we cannot remember ourselves. Question. Is it the same as understanding people? Answer. No, you can understand people only as much as you understand yourself. It is understanding their difficulties, understanding what they want, watching the impression you produce on people, and trying not to produce a wrong impression. Question. Would you say that kindness is external considering? Answer. What you knew in life is not external considering. It is necessary to understand the principle and create standards for oneself. With the help of external considering, you control the impression that you wish to produce. The internal considering you wish to produce with internal considering you wish to produce one impression and produce a different one. Question. External considering seems to me very far away. Answer. It must be here today. If it remains far away, you remain very far away from yourself. Question. Does external considering involve the ability to play a conscious role? Answer. Yes, but there are different degrees. External considering is only the beginning. To play a conscious role means much more. Question. And what is internal considering? Answer. Feeling that people do not pay you enough. Making accounts. Always feeling cheated, underpaid. Question. I find it very difficult to stop inner considering. Is there any special technique to be employed against it? Answer. No, there is no special technique, only understanding and right points of view. Observe more. Perhaps you will find moments free from considering and see how to begin struggling with it and studying it. It is mechanical, a mechanical attitude, the same as identification. Question. Is self-identification always a manifestation of internal considering? Answer. It is connected with it, but it is another thing. Internal considering does not need any justification. One must have a reason for justifying, but if one is in internal considering, one always justifies. Internal considering means identification. External considering means struggle with identification. Internal considering is mechanical. External considering means at least attention. So, by practice, non-identifying, by trying to control attention, You find many opportunities of studying external considering, and if you find examples, perhaps you will find methods of struggling with internal considering and transforming it into the practice of external considering. For instance, you're talking to somebody from whom you want to get something. Say he knows something, and you want to tell him, you want him to tell you what he knows. Then you must speak in a way he would like. Not argue, not oppose him. External considering is always practical. Question: does inner considering means considering oneself too much? Answer: it always takes the form of inner bargaining, of thinking that other people do not consider you enough. It is very important to understand inner considering. There are so many subtle forms of it we do not notice, yet our whole life is filled with it. Question: is desire to be noticed considering? Answer: both desire to be and not to be noticed is considering. There are many psychological states that ordinary psychology cannot explain or describe, which depend on identifying and considering. Question: how is it best to think of inner considering? Answer: you must try in free moments to have a right mind about it. When you are considering, it is too late. You must think of typical cases of considering, of what produces it, and then have a right point of view about it. Realize how useless and ridiculous it is. Then compare it with external considering and try not to forget it. If you do this, you may remember it when a moment of considering comes, and perhaps it will not come. What is really important is to think about considering when you are free from it and not justify or hide it from yourself. Question: the more I try to work, the more I seem to consider internally. It seems the most difficult thing to deal with. Answer: considering cannot grow if you work. It only becomes more visible, and that means that it diminishes, for it cannot be seen without it diminishing. The fact that you notice it proves that it has become less strong. This is a natural illusion, the same as when you feel that one does not understand, whereas before one understood. This means that one begins to understand. The first doubt about one's understanding already means a certain understanding. Question: can one think of identification as a negative state that can only be caused by negative emotions? Answer: no, not quite like that. Identification is a necessary element in every negative emotion. You cannot have a negative emotion without identification. So the study of identification and the study against identification are very powerful weapons in the struggle with negative emotions. Sometimes you cannot struggle with a negative emotion directly, but by trying not to identify, you diminish its power. For all the power of negative emotion lies in identification and imagination. So when you separate identification and imagination, the negative emotion practically disappears, or at least, at any rate, changes. Question: so to fight against negative emotions themselves, we have to observe more and work against the strong identification with emotion. Answer: yes. Later we will speak about methods of struggling with emotions themselves, because there are many and very definite methods, different for different emotions, but first you must struggle with negative imagination and identification. This is quite sufficient to destroy many of the usual negative emotions. In any case, to make them much lighter, you must start with this, because it is only possible to begin using stronger methods when you can struggle with identification to a certain extent and when you have already stopped negative imagination. That must be stopped completely. It is useless to study further methods until that is done. Negative imagination you can stop, and even the study of identification will already diminish it. You must try to avoid identification as often as you can, not only in relation to negative emotions, but in relation to everything. If you create in yourself the capacity of not identifying, that will affect these emotions, and you will notice that they begin to disappear. Identification is the atmosphere in which negative emotions live, and they cannot live without it. Question: can we have some rules or guidance to keep to in ordinary life conditions? Answer: try to remember yourself. Try not to identify. This will immediately produce an effect in ordinary life. What does life consist of? Negative emotions, identifying, considering, lying, sleep. The first point is how to remember oneself, how to be more aware, and then you will find the negative emotions are one of the chief factors which will make us unable to remember ourselves. So one thing cannot go without the other. You cannot struggle with negative emotions without remembering yourself more, and you cannot remember yourself more without struggling with negative emotions. If you remember these two things, you will understand everything better. Try to keep these two ideas, which are connected, in mind. Question: I had a problem which was worrying me. I tried to self-remember, and for a short time, I got into a state in which it was no longer possible to worry, and at the same time, my sense of values generally changed. This state did not last long, but the problem, when it returned as one, did not again assume the importance that it had before. I find it very difficult to recapture this state. Answer: quite right. Continue to observe, and you will find that there is a place in you where you are quiet, calm, and nothing can disturb you. Only it's difficult to find the way there. But if you do it several times, you will be able to remember some of the steps, and by the same steps, you may come there again. Only you cannot do it after one experience, for you will not remember it, the way. You will not remember the way. This quiet place is not a metaphor. It's a very real thing. Question: is it the state that you get in when you self-remember? Because everything seems peaceful then, and one really seems to be aware of oneself. Answer: yes, you can take it like that. Question: I have tried to reach it again by trying to self-remember, but I could not find it. Answer: if you find yourself in it again, try to remember how you got there. For sometimes it happens that one finds this place and loses the way there. Then again one finds it and again loses the way. It's very difficult to remember the way to this place.